Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I've got 7 new cards to look at today. A lot of it is going to be circled around whether Taunt Warrior is going to be good or not. So let's have a quick look at that. Firstly, starting with the Warrior Only card, Into the Fray. It's a spell, it's 1 mana, and it gives all your Taunt minions in your hand +2/+2. So this card on its own is very good. 1 mana to give 1 minion +2/+2 is nice. If you give more than 1 minion +2/+2, it starts to get great, and then even more, it gets OP. A lot of good stat value on this card. Also, it can be played with Archmage Varghulf to give your minions +4/+4 for 1 mana if you've got Varghulf on the board as well. So it's a very good card to go into a deck that wants to play Taunt minions. Now, the problem with this card is it's only as good as the deck that supports it. So is there enough support cards for Into the Fray in Warrior? At the moment, no, but there's a couple of new cards that are coming in the new expansion which will help. We've already seen the Armadillo, which is the legendary, which is a 6 mana, 4/7 Taunt minion that at the end of your turn gives all Taunt minions in your hand +2/+2. So that is really good because you can play Into the Fray and buff the Armadillo first, and then your Armadillo on turn 6 is very difficult to remove, and then you've got a bunch of other Taunt minions in your hand that at the end of your turn will keep getting buffed. So that's a good kind of strategy. Other cards that exist at the moment you could use with this are the Beast Taunts. So I'm talking about Armani Warbear and also the Witchwood Grizzly. Both of those are good taunts on their own. If you buff them, of course, they become even better. But you can also play it with Undasta, which is the rush minion that will summon a beast from your hand. So then you can summon these buff taunt minions from your hand. And then, the Armani Warbear has rush, so you can attack with it at the same turn. The Witchwood Grizzly will have 12 health plus any buffs you put to it. So those cards and that kind of deck can be very good. You can also draw Undasta with Akili the Rhino, so that's another way that you could kind of make that deck work, because Undasta is only 1 card. But if you're playing Warbears, you might draw them as well, but then you get the buff on the Warbear, so it's all really good kind of stuff. Mechs are also good to be buffed. There's a couple of good taunt mechs that you could use. Ziliax is obviously a very strong one, and then once they've been buffed, they just become even more power when you magnetic them to something else, and they can have rush with Dr. Boom, so there's lots of good options here. I like it. I think it's pretty good. It needs to be very strong to move Warrior straight out of Sleeper Control Warrior. But I think this potentially could do it. You can run 2 copies of this in your deck and Armadillo. The problem will be, though, is that's only 3 cards that will buff your hand. Is that enough to put into a buff deck? Plus, you need to have cards in your hand. Warrior doesn't draw in a lot of cards, but they are a class that can just sit there and do nothing until they do have those cards in their hand. So this is a good card, and if Taunt Warrior works, this will be a key part of it. And we'll look at these next 2 cards, which obviously go into that deck as well and even strengthen it. This first one is a neutral minion, but I think you would want to play it in this Taunt Warrior deck. It's called Infested Goblin, a 3 mana, 2 attack, 3 health minion with Death Rattle. Add 2 1/1 Scarabs with Taunt to your hand, and the minion has Taunt as well. So, of course, adding 2 1/1 Scarabs to your hand is very good because those can then be buffed with your Into the Fray. And also this minion itself can be buffed if you played Into the Fray before. So again, this is a nice strong way to do this. The 3 mana 2/3 stats are a little bit weak for 3 mana, but it's got Taunt as well, and it's got a nice Death Rattle. So if you're playing any kind of buff deck, then buffing those 1/1s with Taunt is pretty nice. This sort of card as well is also not too bad late game, just because having a 1 mana 1/1 with Taunt actually can sometimes be very good to play late game. If you just, it can be really annoying for your opponent to get rid of. Yes, there are some hero powers that can do it, but then you're making your opponent spend 2 mana just to remove the 1/1 Taunt with their hero power, and it makes the rest of their turn a bit weaker. So I don't know. I think this is a pretty solid neutral card. It doesn't really go into too many decks. A control deck that doesn't buff the 1/1s or doesn't have too much use of it probably won't play this. But this will definitely go into a Taunt Warrior deck if that becomes strong enough. And this next minion is Warrior Only. And this kind of is another one that knits it together. It's called Frightened Flunky. He's 2 mana, 2 attack, 2 health, Taunt himself, and he has a Battlecry Discoverer Taunt minion. So this is a Stonehill Defender for 2 mana rather than 3 mana. With different stats, and I actually think the Stonehill Defender is probably better, just because a 2 mana 2/2 is quite easy to remove. Even though it's got Taunt, it's easy for an aggro deck to get rid of this. But it's still a very strong card because Discover a Taunt minion is excellent, and you can discover Armadillo off of this as well, which would be very nice for you, and a bunch of other good taunts, Ziliax. Well, if you're playing this Taunt Warrior deck, any taunt that you get is great because it puts it in your hand, and then you can buff it with Into the Fray. So this is a very nice card, and Taunt Warrior does need, if you're going to be doing a hand buff Taunt Warrior, you need to have early minions to play, and you need to have early minions to play that will fill your hand with more cards that can be buffed, and both of these last two cards will do that. So this is a cool little card. You know, even if you're playing a warrior deck, maybe even control warrior deck, without any of these buff cards in it, this isn't a bad card to play on too, because it just gives you another nice card in your hand that you can play at a certain time. It's Discover. We know Discover is very good. You can pick for the situation. Maybe you're looking at your hand. And one of the most important things about Discover is you can plan ahead your turns. Maybe you've got a mana gap, and then you pick a taunt which fits perfectly into that future turn that you don't have a card currently to play in. So I like Frightened Flunky, and I think altogether these cards, along with Armadillo and the other taunts that I mentioned, already kind of makes this an archetype which I think will work. Don't forget as well the Bloodsworn Mercenary, which is the 3-mana 3/3 new card coming for warrior only, that summons a copy of a damaged minion. Well, if you've got these big taunt minions that have been damaged by yourself or your opponent, then summoning a copy of them can be really good. So yeah, lots of good options. I'm glad that this is coming, and I'm looking forward to trying it with warrior. I think it's got some potential. Now let's look at Nefeset Ritualist. This is a 2-mana 2/3 minion. It's rare, it's neutral, and its battle cries restore adjacent minions to full health. This card's excellent. I think it's very good. 2 mana to restore a minion to full health can be really powerful. If you've got a big minion, obviously it can restore a lot of health. But even if you've got a small minion, just restoring its full health and allowing a free trade with another minion is very strong. If you can do that on a minion with 3 health and it trades into a 2-attack minion but can survive at 1 health, that puts you in a really good tempo position. It's a good tempo play, and you don't lose any tempo from playing a 2-mana 2/3 on its own. So it's got very good options in that way. It also restores adjacent minions to full health, so it doesn't have to be on just one minion. I think more than likely you're only going to get it on one minion, but even if you do, I think that's still a strong effect. Where are you going to get it on adjacent minions? It's going to be maybe in Lucent Bark deck. If you've got 2 Lucent Barks on the board, it would be very easy to restore them both to full health. But not only that, it also triggers the effect of restoring the other Lucent Barks back onto the board potentially. And it's good for Druid to have that kind of option of restoring health on a minion's body rather than just a spell. So it's a really solid card, and where I think it can be very strong is if Reborn becomes good, because remember, Reborn minions always come back to life with 1 health. So this will be only for 2 mana, you can restore that back up to full health. So a very strong card. It's a neutral card. It's not got a downside if you play it without getting the effect, because it's still okay to put on the board. Obviously you want to save it for stronger plays, but if you need it for tempo against those aggro decks, etc., it's not too bad to put it down. So a really cool card. I think we're going to see a lot of this one. Diseased Vulture is a Warlock minion, 4 mana, 3 attack, 5 health beast. And after your hero takes damage on your turn, summon a random 3-cost minion. So this is a good card. If you look at the stats for 4 mana, 3/5's pretty good. It's fairly standard, but the 5 health means it's more survivable. So if you did have to play this on turn 4 without any effect, it will probably survive, and you might even get a trade with it. So it's pretty good in that respect. But the effect, after your hero takes damage on your turn, summon a random 3-cost minion, can be very good, because we know Warlock likes to deal damage to itself. Its hero power does that in life tap. Every time you life tap, every time you squeeze in that life tap, it's positive. And being able to add another positive on top of that with Diseased Vulture, it could be pretty good. Let's just say on turn 6 you play Diseased Vulture and tap, then you will get a card, and you'll get a 3/5 plus potentially a 3/3 minion that's summoned randomly. Pretty good, not too bad. The problem with this, and it's similar to Exotic Mount Seller, which is a card that costs 7 mana, and I think has a lot more potential because that summoned a random beast that was 3/3 when you play a spell. So of course, when you're playing spells, it's something that you want to do anyway, and you can play cheap spells to make it repeatable. Whereas with these kind of effects, dealing damage to yourself, often it's quite nice to do that for Warlock, but it's not a particularly repeatable mechanic. You can't continually do that and build these massive boards and constantly snowball, because you're going to be taking too much damage. And I talked about Warlock before not having too much healing, and I don't think they do have enough healing for this type of thing. But Dark Bomb is a pretty solid card. 1 mana card that does 4 damage to a hero and an enemy minion. Well, if you use that with this for 5 mana, that's a pretty strong turn 5 play. But like I said, taking 4 damage to the face can be quite difficult. So it's a nice card. I think it's pretty good. I don't know where it's going to fit. It does fit kind of into a Zoo deck, because Zoo wants to be tapping every single turn. Well, not every turn, but every turn they've got spare mana, they need to be tapping, because they need to have cards to play on the board. This one's a little bit slow if you play it on its own, but then you do get that benefit of having a growing your board, which is exactly what Zoo wants to do. So maybe it goes into there, but I don't think it goes into any kind of control Warlock type deck. It's not that sort of card. So I think we need more deal damage to yourself synergies, but this is quite a nice card that I think if that turns out to be okay and people are playing lots of Dark Bombs, then you could play this. Next, we go on to the Mimi Magu Cultist. This is the ultimate meme. Probably even more of a meme than the Obelisk. Maybe about the same. But it's a 1 mana 1/1, and as the battle cry of your board is full of Magu Cultists, sacrifice them all and summon Highkeeper Ra. And Highkeeper Ra is a 10 mana 20/20 minion that is summoned, so all of these disappear. He's summoned, Highkeeper Ra, and at the end of your turn, he does 20 damage to all enemies. So he doesn't do 20 damage split up. Every single minion on the board takes 20 damage, and your opponent's face takes 20 damage. So that's pretty cool. It's a fun card. Don't worry about this Highkeeper Ra coming out of Conjurer's Calling. It's not a collectible card, so it can't be summoned by Conjurer's Calling. So we don't need to worry about 10 drops being Conjurer's Calling and then you getting 2 Highkeeper Ras. That just won't happen, so that's very good news. But are you going to be able to make this work? Very, very occasionally. Even if you do make it work, it's not enough damage to kill your opponent that turn. So if they've got a way to deal with Highkeeper Ra, which they can very easily with a number of single target removals, then you might be stuck with them at 10 health and you with nothing left to play. But how can you do it? Well, Rogue again is a good way to do this with Togwaggle's Scheme. If you play this with Tack Noswhisker, that is also very good, because you can get some of the Magu Cultists in your hand already. Maybe you can even get 7 in if you've got the perfect hand with an upgraded Togwaggle's Scheme and only sort of 3 other cards in your hand. Then you could do that. Myra's Unstable Element obviously makes it easier to do this kind of thing. So there is a way in Rogue to make this work. But like I said, once you've done it, is it enough to win the game? Probably, but do you want to do it? I don't know. Like, why would you play this and not Mecha'thun? Well, Mecha'thun does require you to get rid of all the other cards in your deck and your hand, so it's a little bit harder to do. Or maybe not harder, but takes a little bit longer. So maybe that might be one positive of the Cultist. The other deck where you could do this is with Glinda Crowskin in Warlock. And Warlock has the advantage of being able to life tap into cards as well. But you would have to have Glinda survive for 1 turn. And then you could play, and 2 Magu Cultists in your hand, play 6 of them. Then you Grim Rally your Glinda Crowskin. Then you play the second Cultist to make the effect work. But, you know, that won't work. I mean, if your opponent's smart, they'll know exactly what you're doing when you put Glinda Crowskin down, and they'll just kill it. So, I can't see too many ways. Maybe we'll see more ways as more cards get announced. But it's going to be fun trying. Another fun card with a cool effect. Now let's talk about the Anubis of Warbringer. I like this card a lot. It's not very good, but I do like it. It's a 9 mana, 9 attack, 6 health minion with a huge death rattle. Give all minions in your hand +3/+3. So this is a card, again, you could play in that warrior deck I talked about, the Taunt Warrior. This doesn't just buff Taunt minions, it buffs all your minions, but it would go in a buff deck. But the problem with it is it's such a high mana cost that it's very difficult to play. It's slow because it's not a battle cry, it's a death rattle, so your opponent can potentially silence it. So where are you going to make this work? Well, I think this would go straight into Plot Twist Warlock. I think it would be very good in that deck because it's got a very high attack. If you bring it out of Fellord Betrug, it's very good to rush. And then, of course, it will buff itself because a copy of it goes into your hand, and it buffs the rest of your big minions by 3/3. That's a very powerful effect. So in that deck it would be very good. Even if you got it out with Dolmaster Dorian and it's just a 1/1, again a huge buff effect. You could also put this in a Dual Paladin. It's got high attack, so it's most likely going to kill anything that comes out of Dual. 6 health means it will probably die, but again, you kind of want it to die because then it buffs your other minions in your hand. So there's some cool applications for this card. I'm going to enjoy playing with it, but it's not the sort of card you want to play on turn 9 for 9 mana. You need to get other ways to put it out, maybe recruit it, something like that. But it's a cool card with a big death rattle that your opponent's not going to want to leave on the board if it's there. So yeah, quite a nice fun card. Alright guys, well that's all the cards I've got to look at today. Some pretty fun ones in there. I'm actually looking forward to playing Taunt Warrior. I think it could be pretty good with those new cards that they've announced today. A good direction to take Warrior in, and it'll be fun to try something new. So let me know what you think about those cards, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.